Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of Shot of Nostalgia. Where, I think the DeLorean broke. We just went back another year. We are live in 95, baby. We are going through every pay-per-view of ECW. I'm good old Mike Belcaster, and god damn it, you know who the man with the plan right over here is.
Live from the No Cell Studios, this is the Ace of the Tavern, Stephen Acefield, and I'm ready to get extreme, dude. This is so exciting to be here. Glad the Wi-Fi is cooperating. I appreciate all the feedback for episode 30, but we are back. New topic, new season, and I feel like we're going to be better than ever, man.
Hell yeah. No, revitalized is an understatement. This was so fun. It was awesome to kind of... I mean, even if the video quality is where it's at, it was still just the wrestling content, the content inside of the shows are just so damn good. And I'm just beyond pumped to be going over it with you, buddy.
So today we are going to be reviewing ECW Double Tables 1995, as you guys can see from the graphic. We're going to be going through all the results from the Hardcore TV leading up. That was from MSG. We'll explain to you guys that as we go. The format's going to be a little bit different. We're going to give you guys as much information as possible. Originally, we were not really going to be talking about Hardcore TV, but I feel like we had to based on what happened in the last couple of weeks. We'd be amiss, and we'd be honestly missing key context of what's going on in Extreme Championship Wrestling. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, listen, man, you have to have... You got to know the whole story to enjoy these shows, to enjoy these episodes, a really deep dive into the 95, man. And I think we're going to do it justice. I think we're going to do some spectacular work here, my friend.
Yeah, so the Hardcore TV stuff, like similar to Nitros, we could have done 2 episodes at once and then paired it with the pay-per-views. But as you guys will see as we go through the results, there's probably 2-3 matches filled with compilations. It would be sort of a waste of time. And I think you guys can get all the information just in a short segment that we're going to be having here to talk about Hardcore TV.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's going to be fun because we're going to give you everything you need to know and just go out and enjoy the show.
And mainly the big thing is to build context around 1995 and ECW and for you guys to understand how truly influential this company was from the onset. I mean, obviously 1994 was a really good year for ECW, but 95 is where they really hit their stride and had, I mean, the roster, as we'll go through, you guys will see the names and what they went on to. And as we can obviously now, we have the benefit of being able to see the future and know exactly where everybody winds up. But man, this roster in 95, top to bottom, is just filled with legends upon legends, even mid-card guys that go on to do really memorable things.
Absolutely, man. Stacked. Like there was names popping up. I was like, no shit. Like I think El Snow is on this card. And like the Snowman El Snow is on the card. Like unrecognizable almost, man. And doing killer in-ring work, you actually see less of the character and more of the in-ring ability, which I was very impressed, man. I was blown away. Really cool stuff.
So let's go into happy usual segment where we're going to be talking about the newsletter led by Dave Meltzer himself. We have a lot of newsletters to break down. All right, so before we get into all of the wrestling results, we're going to be taking a moment to break down a few newsletters. And the first one we're going to be breaking down is from January 4th, 1995. Happy New Year, Belcaster. We're officially in 1995.
Woo! Happy New Year, bud.
All right, so the first thing in the newsletter, and this is the first thing we have in ECW, and again, they're short blurbs. They're not as much informational as WCW was, but there's still a lot of good information that we're going to go through. So the first part that Meltzer writes about ECW in 1995, they announced the top matches for the 114 in Davie, Florida event. Shane Douglas versus Ron Simmons for the ECW Championship. Dean Malenko versus Tasmaniac for the TV title. And 116 in Orlando, Florida. Public Enemy versus Sabu and Tasmaniac for the ECW tag titles. Simmons and Too Cold Scorpio versus Malenko and Chris Benoit. Reason I'm putting that here is the live events are just as important as the televised events here in ECW. They're building towards these big events at the ECW arena and also at these local arenas all around the Northeast.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. And like, this is a lot of the filling of the sandwich. You know, your pay-per-views, your bread, you know, your televised matches are the other piece of bread. But these in between house shows, these were huge and very vital for ECW's growth. So a lot of storytelling was told at these, and it runs canon with what we're going through.
100%, and we get the first mention of Stevie Richards, and he has changed his in-ring name to Stevie Flamingo and is doing a cross between Scotty Flamingo and a Shawn Michaels gimmick, and will probably be Scotty Flamingo's protege or flunky when he starts up on the 1-7 show. Stevie Richards is a huge part of ECW. Everyone remembers the BWO stuff, his main event run where he's challenging for the championship. But in your recollection, do you remember any of this Stevie Flamingo stuff?
I do not, but man, is it so great. Like, just unbelievable gimmick quality and good storytelling, like absolutely great storytelling. And we'll see Raven, you know, and just how different he looks from his Scotty Flamingo character here. And to throw Stevie Richards, the Stevie Flamingo, it's beautiful, man.
I love it. I had to mention it too. Obviously, when you get the Shawn Michaels in '95, he's ruling the wrestling world, and imitation's the highest form of flattery here. Stevie Richards goes on to do really good things, but it's interesting to see these names in the infancy of their ECW tenure. And you mentioned Scotty Flamingo, what he goes on to be.
Yeah, insane, man.
So we have ECW contacting Dan Severn's manager, and they wanted to bring him in to put over Dean Malenko, but they declined. Dan Severn will show up in WWF 1998. He's as boring gets. I know that we got a Dan Severn figure right in the Jack Pacific line. He's probably the most boring wrestler outside of Steve Williams, but he kind of fits ECW. I think it kind of would have worked if they brought him here, but alas, it didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, bringing in like a MMA fighter, I mean, we see it so much nowadays. This was huge to do back in the day, and I think partnering themselves with a UFC/MMA person would have made the legitness more viable then, like way more believable. You've been blown away, and of course, he's going to come in and put over Dean Malenko. Who doesn't want to come over and put Dean Malenko over to the moon? I can't believe they declined it. Such bullshit.
But again, ECW at the forefront of all this progressive mindset, and it's UFC guys, real-time fighters in the octagon. Obviously, UFC wasn't an acceptable form of entertainment just yet, but these UFC guys, WWF gets on that bandwagon, bringing in Shamrock later down the line, and Dan Severn eventually as well. And then, think about where it went eventually with Lesnar and where everything kind of went to. But yeah, this was a huge, huge deal.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, they will be having a party at the Lar Barber nightclub in Manhattan on 1/5 to promote their debut on the MSG cable later that night. There's been a lot of speculation on what would happen should they decide to promote in New York State in regard to the Athletic Commission toning down the shows. We talk about the Athletic Commission a lot. They have to run in specific arenas because they're not allowed to do certain things, and that's still true to this day. Can you speak to the Athletic Commission a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, come on, it's crazy. We see it with, most recently GCW at Hammerstein Ballroom. Like, you're seeing floor mats, guardrails. Just it really changes the aesthetic of what you're comfortable with, what you've grown to love out of these companies. And it was way tougher back in '95 to get shit done. So those Athletic Commission, those guys were tough people to persuade.
And it's a real life thing. Like, I thought it was just one of those things they have to sign off and they just make sure there's a fire exit and all that. When I was doing the ring announcement at Remarkable Wrestling, I was in the back and they were literally taking the blood pressure and checking pulses on all of the wrestlers that were wrestling. They're screaming, make sure you check in with the doctor before you guys go out, and you can't wrestle unless you check in with the doctor. So that was the first. I've been a wrestling fan for almost 30 years. And that's the first time I actually saw it happen. And they're like, dude, this happens at every event, big and small.
Yeah, it's wild. My little stints in the Indies, Chicago's Athletic Commission is a little more lenient. They don't show up to your shows at the barn, checking people's blood pressure and shit like that. But yeah, we never really had to worry about that. But I know up your way, it's deep, man. They are
shook me down.
legit.
He's like, dude, are you wrestling tonight? I'm like, no, I'm ringing announcing. He's like, is anyone going to touch you? You taking any bumps? I'm like, no. And he's like, I got to take your blood pressure anyway. So I was sitting there with Take the suit jacket off, sir. I'm like, God damn, I'm getting my blood pressure taken at an indie show.
It works, man. At least the protocols are there for safety, thankfully, and it's not just some random fan trying to get the Iggy and give you the blood pressure check.
So as we move on to the January 9th, 1995 newsletter the next week, we have more information about ECW. There is also both AAA and ECW to consider as far as shaping the future of wrestling. This is from Meltzer. Both are limited in potential for obvious reasons, but that isn't saying they couldn't either or both be successful. The key is exposure, and worrying about strengths and weaknesses of the products as arguments really means nothing until the groups first get the necessary exposure to allow them to compete on a major scale. Japan already has its own group with a AAA type modern day lucha libre combined with Japanese style Michinoku Pro that has a cult following promoting in small towns in rural and northeastern Japan. So he's reading the tea leaves here. He sees how influential ECW is going to be going on to be. We'll talk about it. Chance in the arena is still to this day. ECW is living and breathing still, even though they've been out of business for over 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely had the biggest impact, I think, outside of WCW and WWE. I mean, huge, especially coming up with the grunge era, just being so the alternative in more ways than one. It was not just about the programming. It was about the music, the way the wrestlers dressed, the way they performed. I mean, Raven comes out, he's wearing a leather jacket, he's got the flannel tied around his waist, ripped up jean shorts, and he's just this, grungy looking Nirvana type person, and it really plays off like that, man. And like, I'm telling you, the music was a huge deal. We were speaking about it a little bit before we started here, but I mean, Mikey Whipwreck comes out the loser, Raven comes out with Offspring. It was just like so many little awesome details like that. They sell the characters, they sell the matchups, they sell everything, and the fans have a blast partying and jamming out to their favorite tunes, man. It works out for everyone.
Yeah, music and ECW go hand in hand, and we've noticed that on Peacock when you watch what WWE has presented to us without the music. It's a toned down, neutered version of what's going on there. And thanks to Tom, obviously Tom of the Turnbuckle Tavern, he was able to find us through the resources. And I think
little
ECW
tape trading.
Yeah. We'd be proud about how we came to own these undoctored versions of the ECW event that we were able to enjoy.
Yeah, it was great.
All right. So continuing with Meltzer said, ECW's future depends on first getting exposure strong enough to run pay-per-view off of it, then being successful on pay-per-view. Without those two steps, they may gain a lot of notoriety among some fans, but they really won't be a factor as major players in 1995. He's right there. They're going to have difficulty in the coming years to get on pay-per-view, but he sees that as a huge factor. TV deal on MSG is a big deal, but pay-per-view is that next step to put them up to WCW and WWF's level as far as competition goes.
Yeah, 100%. Imagine how different the game would be if there was a streaming service at the time for you to watch. I mean, they could have probably picked up with somebody a lot easier than it was to get a pay-per-view. Cost would be down. You wouldn't have to worry about production as much. You just kind of put out your if there was a Fight TV in 1995, I think ECW might still be a little bit around. Who knows? You can't really say it would happen, but I think there would be a better chance of it being there as opposed to being bought out and shielded.
We'll certainly get into that, and I think you and I alluded to at the episode 30 of Shot Nostalgia with WCW, biting off more than they can chew with ECW, and I think if they took baby steps instead of like a million giant steps to get to where they were, they grew so much from 95 until 98. Think about what growth they had, but at what expense? They completely mortgaged the whole company.
Yeah. It's insane.
All right. So we got Tully Blanchard's coming in to challenge Shane Douglas for the ECW title on 1/7. They are trying to intimidate that Blanchard is somehow another missionary of Ric Flair, pointing that them being tag team partners from years back. Besides the 3-4 match already unannounced, they also added Pitbulls versus Axel and Ian Rodden, Mikey Whipwreck versus the Giant, Paul Lauria. So it's interesting too. You get WCW getting a little bit of their playbook used against them. They're alluding that Tully Blanchard is a member of WCW, trying to bring the old school wrestling, old Southern wrestling to ECW. And the program kind of works. Tully Blanchard gets some good heat in ECW.
Yeah. No, he absolutely does. And it's cool to see. I mean, they did it with Rick Rude. They've brought in Scott Hall. They've had leeway with bringing in wrestlers and stuff like that, but they always use it right. Like they say that Tully Blanchard's part of the Southern Wrestling Company, trying to make it seem the smoke and mirrors were really, really badass for ECW because it worked. It sold the story so damn well. And the Shane Douglas being the new guy that, spits on the belt, throws it down, to the fat guy, Dusty Rhodes, claiming that he's the ECW champion. And, like, it's so cool. So, like, you got kind of the best of both worlds colliding here. And they do it very well, man.
And what would be ECW without some X-rated content? And, cover your ears if you guys don't want to hear any X-rated content, but we have to talk about it here. On an angle talked on the 12/26/1994 issue where Cactus Jack clocked Angel with the stick, it was actually Tommy Dreamer, not Cactus Jack, who made the remark about, and I quote, busting the Virgin's cherry. Even ECW edited that off of television. So they're pushing the limit, but I think they kind of know where the line is. And I don't know. I mean, we're going to see a lot of this going on about the commentary and the things that are being said on TV, what's being chanted, what's not edited out. This was at 1995. I'm 6 years old. You're how old? It's a lot. You're watching as a kid. And we talked about this on the Visits the Tavern with Joey Conway. He was a big ECW fan. Shout out to the Cause of All from NYWC. He's going to be probably joining us here on this, but he was saying he would watch ECW in his room and didn't know what he was watching, but it was making him shift his perspective at a young age of what wrestling could be.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I couldn't agree more with that statement. Like, like I said, I used to stay up till like 2 a.m. It was on public access here in Chicago. Didn't really have a home. It was some weeks it was on, some weeks it was off. You just didn't know the schedule. You hoped it would be there, but when you heard that extreme music hit, you're like, hell yeah. And it did really change your whole outlook on not just the in-ring stuff again, but like the character work. You really get, it was captivating. Like in no matter what age you are, you're like, holy shit. But I totally do remember some line crossing moments and some Girl Gone Wild-esque promos and stuff like that. So I mean, they pushed the line, but they never went super crazy with it.
So we continue here with more Stevie Flamingo news, and says, after being called Steve Flamingo last week, Stevie Richards is doing a Scotty Flamingo imitation. This week was being called Stevie the Body. And Meltzer says, I have a feeling next week he'll be Stevie Polo, and obviously alluding to Raven's WWF gimmick. So Stevie Richards is trying to find his way here. And again, just interesting to see these names interconnected. They're legends of ECW just in their infancy.
Yeah. Baby Stevie Richards too. It's great. But it also goes like, to see how they work here and how they turn into the Flock in WCW, and they're all kind of with each other. So it's insane. And then you get the BWO coming up. Like this is Stevie Richards in his little infancy, though. It's fantastic.
So we're going to move on to the January 16th, 1995 newsletter as we cruise through January a little bit quicker than we did with WCW, but that's how it is going to be on ECW 1995. The first official announcement of the weekly pro wrestling 4-2 show at the Tokyo Dome was the issue that came out this week. No matches were announced since it's a press time. They haven't been made. For our reference here, ECW is playing with the big boys. I mean, they're involved with Michinoku Pro. They're going to be involved with Rings, WAR, UWFI, Pancrase, All Japan Women, JWP, LLPW, New Japan, All Japan. What this is just exposure for ECW on a big market. This is them taking a jump and say, hey, check out our talent. And little did we know the amount of talent that ECW had in their grasp at this moment. I don't think they even knew the amount of legends and the future Hall of Famers that were just residing on this roster.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So this would be, and then Meltzer had said the final quote. He said that there's a lot in this. If you guys want to check out the January 16th, 1995 newsletter to hear a little bit about the Tokyo Dome show that's being planned for April. We talked a little bit about that in the WCW 1996 show, where we talked about the past super shows as we were building up towards the Inoki super show that we alluded to. But what Meltzer really says about this would be a huge feather in the cap of ECW as far as their image in Japan going forward. And that's a lot of the rabid fan base they want to mimic or base themselves around. That we talked about, Michinoku Pro has this cult following that get people excited about their product and gets, they have a small fan base, but they're rabid and they come to every show. They buy the merch. They buy all the tapes. They find a way to consume the product. And ECW was not quite there yet, but that's where they would go. And I think they followed in the footsteps of what Michinoku Pro did in Japan.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I mean, you see it. It was very, very much so during '95. Like you're getting the grasp of how influential it was to ECW.
So the January 7th ECW Arena show, which drew a sellout of approximately 1,000, started out strong, but ended on a sour note. So this was one of the more interesting things in the newsletter. It started with the negative, the Shane Douglas versus Tully Blanchard 60-minute draw. which was actually about 43 minutes, which the fans knew. There were fans that understood that it wasn't actually 60 minutes. And Meltzer said this was probably the worst received match in the history of ECW up until that point. So Meltzer wasn't there in the building, but he's talking about reports that he was receiving. And he said, we received numerous reports on the match ranging from it really wasn't bad, but the crowd didn't accept it because there was no chair shots, to it was just god awful, with the latter few being by far the majority. It was so bad that the bleacher section turned their back on the match and began chanting, "We want bingo, who booked this crap, and for somebody to do a job and end it." Reporters are that Blanchard, who hasn't worked a match in several years, is 41 years old, was blown up anywhere from 8 to 15 minutes in, and the match itself was 85 to 90% rest holds. I'll continue with that, but thoughts on that? First of all, 41 years old, Tully Blanchard. They're acting like he's a dinosaur. Bryan Danielson's older than that right now.
It's insane, man. I could see where the crowd would get hot about it, but I love the whole, turning their back to the action. I love that. Going, we want bingo. Fuck yeah. Like, let's do that, man. But to hear that he got blown up, in such a short time frame, and that the match was not like 90% rest holds, that I would be pissed too, man. And that you're expecting a great match out of this, and you got 43 minutes of bullshit to go through, apparently. And they have every right to turn their backs, chant, "We want bingo, who booked this crap?" Like, let's do it, man.
So continuing with what Meltzer said about this match, he said fans booed every near fall when a wrestler would kick out. The idea going in was that these two would have a classic match to build for a rematch, but they didn't have that classic, and no word on how or if future plans have changed because of it. It didn't help the final match of the show, the 3-on-4 match with Sabu and Tasmaniac and 911 beating Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko and Public Enemy, which ended when Benoit accidentally drop-kicked Johnny Grunge, allowing Taz to pin him. Only went 6 minutes with no expected major post-match angle. The crowd heavily booed at the end of the show instead of the usual chants of ECW. Up until that point, it has been a strong show. Stevie Richard introduced his manager, which we now know is Raven. And this Meltzer had said, this is the first introduction of Raven in the newsletter. He said, Johnny Polo doing a takeoff on the Crow. So this is before, first of all, Sting becoming the Crow. And this is, I guess, Meltzer's interpretation of that. How interesting is that?
Yeah, it's wild. I guess Meltzer wasn't hip with the music scene and the grunge scene, so that was his reaction. Like, yeah, he's like one of the Cardis in the fucking Crow movie.
So he continues talking about this event. The other notable piece is Mikey Whipwreck, and he lost to Giant Loria in what was not a great match, but in reality, both of them are best friends, Loria and Mikey Whipwreck, and they were trying to really sell that they hated each other. But the story they told about Whipwreck and how he got his job at ECW was when the two, as part of the ring crew, were screwing around in the ring doing dangerous high spots. The two did the spot on the show where Whipwreck did the Rey Mysterio Jr. plancho off the top rope onto Loria in the front row. But the thing that caught my eye was Mikey Whipwreck was part of the ring crew, and they hired him based on the fact that he was screwing around the ring. Did you ever hear that story?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I heard lots of, a lot of that. There was, I guess he was amazing at selling while he was doing the screwing around, and they loved him. So they like the way he could take a bump and be thrown around. It clicked for somebody, probably Paulie. He was like, let's book this guy. Cause I mean, why not? And to see how his career went. I mean, how awesome is that, man? To be a goof, fucking around, putting the ring together for shows, tearing it down, but you get picked up because you're good at, screwing around with it because you do it so much, man. And it's a poetic journey for Mikey Whipwreck.
Yeah, and Mikey Whipwreck, you're going to hear a lot about him in the interview with Joey Conway. He's NYWC legend, was part of training Joey Conway. He's very influential in the New York wrestling scene. I mean, so influential in ECW, but also in building up the future stars. He also trained Cardona, and we just heard that. I mean, Cardona is, huge on Mikey Whipwreck as far as how he was influenced growing up in the wrestling business.
Absolutely. One of the last matches I got to call when I was doing indies was a Mikey Whipwreck match, and he was the sweetest, awesomest dude. And I went to take him for lunch. My credit card didn't go through, and it was the most embarrassing shit in the world. He was laughing his ass off.
He was just like the rest of the night.
He's like, motherfucker, man. And like it was just funny, but I mean, at the age he was at the time, I mean, that was years ago, but it was awesome just being around his presence, and just like, because he was always one of my favorites And I mean, this guy, he was a lot more toned down, but he was still taking bumps through chairs and shit. And I was just mind blown and super impressed.
So the last thing about this show, and there was one good spot that Meltzer talks about here. He had said the Pitbulls beat Bad Breed, and this was a match, an ECW special four-way juice, brawling all over with fans participating, giving all four various foreign objects and rated anywhere from 4 to 5 stars, depending on who you talk to. After the match, Ian did turn on Axel, which was interesting because I never thought that they did break up, and I guess they did a few times in my research. But this is one of the first mentions we see in the newsletter of fans giving weapons becomes commonplace in ECW. One of the cooler spots, and he said, when you watch these highlight compilations, you see guys give crutches, they give the backs of their chairs, anything's used as a weapon, and just becomes a very immersive experience for fans at ringside.
Yeah, man. I remember somebody gave a Nintendo Entertainment System, the OG Nintendo at one time. There was VCRs. It was a blast. And again, crowd interaction like that was second to none. I don't think there's any company outside of GCW that holds that kind of quality where you are one with the show while you're there. And that's awesome, man. And I think that's what attracted me to ECW is when I seen shit like that. I was like, I want to get a front row ticket. I want to hand that guy a giant do not enter sign. Like, I want to be there.
So at the 2-4 show that they're advertising for, Meltzer mentions there will be a convention of fans from the internet from across the country attending. This was unheard of in the wrestling world at this point because, I mean, it's commonplace now. You got fans meet up on forums. You have the Turnbuckle Tavern. We're meeting up at Full Gear tomorrow, and it's going to be the Extra Cooler Bros and Turnbuckle Tavern guys, and we all, we're at Chicago, and point being is the internet brought us closer together. You and I, you're in Chicago, I'm here on Long Island, and
absolutely.
But ECW was doing that. Fans were bonding over this product and wanting to meet up with each other to go see the events in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's insane, man. What a time to be alive, because the internet, I mean, was barely anything outside of Netscape. These guys were really dedicated to get online on a server on their dial-up, boom, go talk to each other and meet up. It's insane, man. I remember my mom yelling at me when I was like 12, like, don't meet strangers on the internet. And these guys are doing it in 95. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, ECW at this point, and you think about what WCW is doing. We're talking about the hotline and how they're breaking news with Mean Gene, but ECW is looking at this like we already have all the information and they're bonding over the product and really setting the stage for what becomes the IWC. I mean, we can all say that the social media age of wrestling, before that, there was the forums and people kind of sharing stories, sharing events. The only way we have an understanding about what happened at this event is because of the fact we have the newsletter. We also have people that were in attendance that are communicating with each other because this wasn't televised.
Yeah. It's wild.
So here we are with Barry Windham. He was contacted about coming in to wrestle Shane Douglas as another missionary of Ric Flair, but Windham has a lawsuit out against him claiming his knee was so badly damaged, working that he'll be suffering for life and unable to wrestle again. In fact, Eric Bischoff was supposed to be in deposition with Windham's lawyers this week. But I don't know. Maybe they shift from this idea of Barry Windham taking on Shane Douglas because of how badly the Tully Blanchard thing flopped. I don't think they want to bring two older guys together again.
Yeah, I get where they were going with it, though. It's a great concept, having these former huge, NWA themed people coming after that. And Shane Douglas, just pissed all over the NWA, so it adds that fire to it. But yeah, Barry Windham, man, I don't know how good that would have been, especially with the blown out knee.
So ECW's time slot on the MSD network will be moved permanently to midnight on Wednesday night, starting on January 18th. This is where we all remember it. You remember it as late as possible. You turn it on, and you're not supposed to be watching TV on Wednesday nights. It's school night.
Yeah,
ECW's on, and you're captivated. Our young eyes can't get enough of it.
It's crazy.
Todd Gordon, who we all know Todd Gordon, famous Todd Gordon. He was the founder of Eastern Championship Wrestling as it transitioned to Extreme Championship Wrestling. He apparently vetoed having 911 chokeslam little people. So we see these smaller lucha divisions that we see cropping up in 96 in WCW and WWF. But again, ECW setting the tone. They wanted 911 to really get some heat by chokeslamming them in the ring. But Todd Gordon said, no, we're extreme, but that's too extreme right now. But they'll go there eventually.
Yeah, but I mean, 911 was a big dude, and to see him throwing around little people like that. Like, there's something to it. It's not
We
not the
saw
Vince
911
McMahon
in
quality.
WCW.
Yeah,
We did
no,
see him.
it's great, but it's wild, man.
All right, so it's been reported in Japan that ECW and the new WING promotion formed by Mickey Arabi have reached a talent trading agreement, but that wasn't confirmed here. The next report claimed Jason the Terrible, who is known as Roberto Rodriguez, his shoot name, would work for ECW next month, and that Shane Douglas and Public Enemy would tour the WING in March. Forbidden Door setting the tone here. I know WING is a newer promotion in Japan. They don't have the sea legs under them that a New Japan has, but it's still cool. ECW is understanding that in order to sustain themselves, they have to cycle in new talent and get new faces in there to stay fresh, because these live audiences, which is similar to the old World Championship Wrestling, the old NWA, these studio audiences, when they run the same arena over and over again, you have to mix it up. You have to find a way to get something over. You know, Ric Flair talks about his matches with Steamboat. They had to do something a little bit different every night to get the fans to react.
Yeah. No, listen, you do shows like that, and the repetitiveness, it really kicks in, and you don't want fans buying tickets to see the same thing they seen last week or last month, you know. So it's hard to keep it fresh, but somehow they did it.
So ECW did a short tribute to Art Barr on television 2 weeks ago at the end of the show. Barr had never worked for promotion, although 1 week before he died, Paul Heyman had called Barr about how he and Eddie Guerrero were working with Public Enemy. Ironically, to this point, neither AAA nor WCW did anything of the sort on their television. And in fact, WCW never even mentioned it on their TV. AAA did do a tribute at the TV taping, as did EMLL, but because emotions ran so high, neither ended up airing on TV. So paying tribute to Art Barr, the only person that paid tribute was Paul Heyman, doing right by the wrestling business. And that's how you make headway. Like, I mean, you're doing the right thing. I know Paul Heyman gets a lot of, shit for being a carny and shorting people on money, but he understands the legacy of wrestling, how it's important to pay tribute to the history. And this is just another example of it.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I think it's awesome. A good tribute to, anybody, be it LB Art Barr in this circumstance. It shows that he's a promoter that cares about the business. So doing a tribute like that, it really stands out, especially when you got bigger companies like WCW not doing shit for it.
So moving to the January 23rd, 1995 newsletter, the January 14th Davie, Florida, and the January 16th Orlando shows drew small but enthusiastic crowds of about 300 each night. Crowds were into the storylines from the TV and knew the personalities, and at the end of the Davie, Florida show, they threw tons of chairs in the ring, while in Orlando, they chanted ECW. They were talking about returning in April, although with crowds of that size using so many wrestlers, mainly from the Northeast and even a few fly-ins, it had to be a major disappointment financially. So the fact that they're trying to run Florida so early on in there, it shows that Paul Heyman has the vision of what he wants ECW to be. But you and I talked about biting off more than you could chew. Maybe if he just stayed in the Northeast or just specifically Philly, I don't know, maybe they would still be around, because I think so early on, you're drawing 300, flying in all those guys, paying for hotels, and it's a lot of money to be doing that.
Yeah, a lot of money, that's where that's going to start. That's where you're really going to be hitting the pockets, is traveling out people. I mean, yeah, you could use local talent, you could make it as special as you can, but 300 people coming to a show, it ain't gonna put dinner on everybody's table,
Yeah, so we had Razor Ramon backstage at the Orlando show, just taking it in. You mentioned Razor eventually doing some time in ECW and being around there. Interesting enough that he's there. He probably just happened to be in the area, but very, very interesting to see that mentioned here. So casually.
Yeah, he's just hanging out. He's doing his thing. He's the bad guy. Bad guy's hanging out with the other bad guy.
Similar to when Seth Rollins showed up to GCW during WrestleMania weekend. Was that WrestleMania weekend or SummerSlam weekend? I think it was Nashville.
It was one. So it's SummerSlam. It was good though. You got to support your homies, right? And
hell yeah.
I mean, who more beneficial to have backstage at the time than Scott Hall? If you have guys fucking a vault of a bunch of different information from the wrestling industry. Of course, I would have loved to have him backstage.
Hell yeah. So this past week's television show largely revolved around the group's party celebrating their New York debut, with them trying to portray Shane Douglas in a total Ric Flair suit and tie ladies man gimmick and trying to act like fans are in awe of him like they were with Flair. Shane Douglas is presented in a certain way. He gets a lot of credit for what ECW became, because he's the guy who threw down the NWA championship and claimed ECW is its new promotion, not recognizing Eastern Championship Wrestling, that famous moment. Your thoughts on Shane Douglas being presented that way? Because for me, Shane Douglas was always a certain aesthetic, and it wasn't this.
Yeah, Shane Douglas was like the anti-hero of that mindset. You know, you had Ric Flair, but he despised Ric Flair, but at the same time he was trying so hard to be that kind of esque character where he is the man of the company. Like, he carries around the belt. Even like when he threw down that title, you see the look of disgust in his mouth when he goes, Ric Flair's. Like, he really sells it, spits on the title. It's awesome. But a genuine heat between Flair and Douglas, and never got to the bottom of that. But I love the ongoing feud between both of them. It's great.
I'm sure if Ric Flair thinks about it, he'll probably say something about it, because everything that pops into Ric Flair's brain, he tweets it. So we'll see eventually if someone just write, what do you think of Shane Douglas, Rick? And then we'll get our answer maybe.
He's like, buy my weed, woo!
All right, so moving to the January 30th, 1995 newsletter, we get another mention of a fan meetup here. For ECW fans in Atlanta, Dirty Al Sport Bar in Marietta is going to be holding weekly get-togethers every Tuesday at 6 p.m. to watch the ECW television show off the satellite. How cool is that, man? Fans gathering to watch the product. I mean, it just shows how passionate these fans are.
Yeah, and off the satellite, that is top tier shit right there, man. I always was like curious why we never had satellite dishes when we were kids. It's like, that's rich people stuff. We can't get the satellite dishes. We get cable, man. So very awesome.
So Public Enemy did an interview on TV cracking on everyone in wrestling. They thanked Vince McMahon for giving them so much publicity, because all he talks about are the new generation of wrestlers, when everybody knows they are the new generation. They also talk about the Tully Blanchard Shane Douglas 60-minute draw, saying that Douglas not only tortured Blanchard, but tortured all of the fans. So if we're keeping score at home, you and I ripped on Public Enemy as far as WCW goes. I didn't see the allure. Hearing them say that, there's a point in the Public Enemy the positive section for me.
It's only going to get better, I promise you, man. We did that whole season of shit on them in WCW, but the second they came out at this show that we're covering, I was already back in the Public Enemy fan base. I was like, hell yeah, I'm doing this. As they're walking around, I was ready to roll, man. It was awesome. Like, you really fell. I'm telling you, the music and the whole thing, it was the whole aesthetic of what ECW was. You get attracted to it so easily, man. And I'm like, oh, I love Public Enemy.
So Mickey Arabi's WING show starts on 3/25. They announced that Shane Douglas, Public Enemy, the Pitbulls, and Tasmaniac will be on tour. Remember, WING is doing the talent sharing with ECW, which has already caused controversy since Tasmaniac is with H1 and definitely won't be on this tour. In addition, it's during the school year, so getting Douglas for a week would be difficult because he works full-time as a school teacher in Pittsburgh area and only wrestles out of the area on weekend. How independent wrestling is that? That's amazing.
Absolutely, man.
It's just like, it popped me so huge because all the independent wrestlers have side hustles, side jobs, shoot jobs, and Shane Douglas, the fucking world champion, is doing the same here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, recently he was working at Target. Like, he's one of those. I'm serious too. Like, he I think he's a teacher now or something. But whatever it is, like, he was working at Target maybe 10 years ago. It's crazy. While he was in TNA.
Speaking of Shane Douglas versus Tully Blanchard, they will headline the 2-4 Philadelphia show after all. The storyline they're trying to push is that Blanchard came back and tried to be a wrestler, which is why the first match was so boring. So they don't outright say this, but they strongly hint at it. But that this time he's coming in as a brawler as the old Tully Blanchard as opposed to the new Tully Blanchard. And Meltzer says, from what I understand, this will be a lengthy program during the upcoming interviews. Douglas will talk about Blanchard's days with the Four Horsemen when he would do matches high on coke and drunk. So after the 2-4 show, the next ECW Arena date scheduled at press time was 3/18, although they may take a date in between. So they're going to gloss over the high and drunk thing. Any truth to that? Do we know that's true, or is it just storyline being storyline?
I've heard stories of other people doing it, so it would not surprise me. Tully seems like he was a partier back in the day too, man. So I wouldn't put it past the man.
So there's a group of people trying to get local TV clearance for ECW in Birmingham, Alabama on the channel called WABM, which is channel 68 locally. So Conrad Thompson, if you're listening, I know that's for you. They want to have it at 11 a.m. on Saturdays. The station is currently airing the Jim Crockett's Dallas tapes in that slot from 4 to 5 years ago. And the station officially claims that they aren't going to make a change, nor are they interested in any new wrestling shows. History of doing this newsletter has shown that when a wrestling promotion that isn't totally out in the left field, like a Herb Adams group, announces a clearance and you call the TV station, they say no, that 85 times out of 100, it's the TV station that's the one not telling the truth, which said something about the industry when wrestling promoters are more likely to be telling the truth. Meltzer says a lot of words there, essentially saying, same story we've been hearing since the beginning of us even doing the research. ECW is having a hard time gaining traction in all these markets. They can't get a stranglehold and get people to understand we are just as sports entertainment as WWF and WCW. We just do things a little differently.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of him calling the TV people crooks here, like Carney motherfucker. It's crazy. when you're saying that Paul Heyman is more truthful than a TV network executive at the time, there is some shit going down in the TV industry, man.
Fantastic. So ECW claims that the Davie, Florida show drew 548 paid, although there were about 300 in the building because the weather was so horrible the day of the show, and that Orlando drew 427, which the newsletter reported 300. But Meltzer says the shows were a success because they did $7,200 in merchandise, mainly videotape sales, at the two shows, which by the American standards is a remarkable per cap for souvenirs. They're going to be returning to Florida in April. So that's how they're going to make a lot of their money. It's going to be the shirts. It's going to be the tapes. It's going to be any sort of merch people can get their hands on, because it's certainly not going to be 300 people paying for a ticket. When you see that number, it's jarring. I know he's like saying 427, like that's a better number than 300. But I mean, any indie show you go to, they would be upset about 427.
Yeah, and one of the worst shows I was ever a part of. It was at this. We had a venue in Illinois called the Barn, and obviously it's in a barn. It's out of like a giant farmland area. The promoters bring in Lance Storm, which is awesome. I'm pumped. I'm excited to meet him. It is about 110 degrees outside. Inside that barn, it must have been like 120, 125. Like, it was hot in there, and I think we drew maybe like 30 people. And
wow.
We've brought in big names. We've had good 1,500, 2,000 people in buildings and stuff. But Lance Storm walks in and he's just like, the fuck did I fly out here for? You could just tell by he was just so like, fuck, man. Like seeing the crowd turn out, he was just like, nah, I'm good. Like, he didn't want to work anybody, didn't want to do anything. He was just like, yeah, I'll stay in here. I'll watch the show, give you guys pointers. I'm good. Fun stuff.
It's sad when you think about that.
Yeah. Super sad,
right,
man.
so moving
but 300 is a great
13th,
number.
1995 newsletter. True.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're back. We got a little bit of the disconnection there, but February 13th, 1995 newsletter. The most talked about smaller promotion in the world is without a doubt the Philly-based Extreme Championship Wrestling. The irony are many. ECW is a group that has never drawn more than 1,000 to a show in its history, yet it was one of the two American promotions to be invited to the multi-promotional Tokyo Dome show. It finished third for Best Promotion and won the Best TV Show in the Observer balloting. Among its relatively small core of fans are people who regularly drive hundreds of miles to the converted bingo halls for its major show each month. Thoughts on Meltzer's commentary here?
It's interesting. Clearly, the fan base is pushing for it, and I mean, they won Best Television. That's insane. I think Meltzer's kind of happy about it, but not happy about it. He seems a little cocky, like, oh, whatever. They haven't drew more than 1,000 people, but obviously, they're a cult classic thing going on. Like, the people want to be a part of ECW. It's just like, watching a Kevin Smith movie. It's got that same kind of mentality to it. It's different. It's not, Sony Pictures. It's not whatever. We're fucking Miramax, man. We're going hardcore with the ECW fan base, and that I like to see that shit, man. I'm always for the underdog and go ECW.
So he continues, the irony doesn't end there. Promoters involved with much larger organizations, such as Eric Bischoff this past weekend with WCW, when plugging the pay-per-view in Baltimore, and Ron Scholar are clearly bothered with the attention ECW is receiving. ECW is talked of as being the best wrestling in the U.S., and among groups that regularly run house shows, it probably delivers the best house show product. An asterisk has to be put by that, but the statement when comparisons are made with other groups, because judging from the physical punishment many of the guys take, they couldn't possibly work to that level if they were doing 4 to 5, or maybe 6 shows a week. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's catching Eric Bischoff's attention. It's getting people upset. So it's getting attention, but it's only the hardcore showing up. It won't be that for long. There's going to be a huge wave of people that are going to really catch fire and understanding that this product is something special to watch.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So fans from approximately 20 states and 4 countries were among the 790 paid from, probably slightly more, because some who bought advanced tickets, particularly from out of town, may have wanted to challenge the weather conditions or so. The figure held down by a severe snowstorm, which caused WWF to cancel its All-American house show dates over the weekend at the ECW Arena on 2/4 for Booker Paul Heyman's latest concoction. So ECW fans came out when it snowed. WWF fans didn't show up, but they were ready to go. But 20 states, man, people are traveling from all over the place to watch this product.
It's insane. Dedication.
So the deal that Meltzer was talking about last week with WBAM in Birmingham, Alabama is a done deal. In fact, the station did some promotional work with several of the other wrestlers, then did a local angle with Douglas and Blanchard at a racetrack. So all that for nothing. They're going to get TV in Birmingham, Alabama after all.
And that's the 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning time slot. You know how the fuckery that would cause if we were watching ECW at 11 a.m., eating our cereal, like in our jammies, hanging out.
So besides the ECW Arena, they did a spot show on 2/3 before about 400 at a nightclub in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, with no major angles coming out of it, but Sabu beating Al Snow in a 4-star match on top in the main event. So they're just running shows for the sake of running shows. If they happen to be in the area, they're like, we have a show the next day. You guys want to run a show quick? The most cowboy shit you've ever seen in your life.
I love it, man. That's independent wrestling and it's fine.
So both Terry Funk and DC Drake were talked with about coming into feud with Cactus Jack. The Funk deal fell through, and Drake was supposed to begin on 2/4. However, Drake was stranded somewhere in New England and couldn't make it. Don't be surprised to see him coming eventually. The snow kept him from getting to the show. Terry Funk eventually gets there as well. Interesting names. I mean, Cactus Jack is a highly touted talent. We'll talk about him in the main event here. Wrestling Sandman, the Texas Death Match. But again, just looking at Foley, at what he is, and at the ground floor of his career, man, it's exciting to think about the things we're going to be seeing this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it just goes to talk about the bank of talent that was in ECW this year. It's just absurd and insane, but it's awesome to see Foley. This is my favorite version of Foley. I think is this gritty ECW Mick Foley, because he's just a wild man. And Cactus Jack, and it's the best.
So we'll go through the results of the hardcore TVs in a second, but the last thing in the newsletter is the January 31st television show may have been the best ECW hour to date, according to Meltzer. It featured 2 4 1/4 matches, one with Sabu and Tasmaniac versus Public Enemy, and the other a Falls Count Anywhere match with Sandman and Cactus Jack, both from 116 in Orlando, Florida. Meltzer continues, Jack did an excellent interview at the end saying he'll hang it up if he couldn't beat Sandman in their death match in Philadelphia. So building up the pay-per-view, getting reps in, fascinating stuff in the newsletter.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to see a little snarkiness from Dave kind of towards the product still. Like, he's just like, they can barely draw. Like, but obviously you're seeing the downhill effect of the snowball effect, it's growing rapidly and quick, and they don't need these big arenas. They don't need 20,000 people. They're doing just fine.
Yeah, I mean, are you satiated from that newsletter? Was it a different feel? We're at 50 minutes from the newsletter. I feel like I'm really satisfied with the information that Meltzer gave us.
Yeah, 100%. And a lot of juicy details in there. And a lot of, you got a point towards Public Enemy fandom now, because Meltzer reported that that they, people were born the fans. It's great. It's fucking awesome.
So, again, the newsletter is going to be looking different from week to week. Who knows what information is going to be in there, but I'm going to take the culmination of 6 weeks, sometimes 7 weeks, just the time periods in between events, just to have an understanding about the context. And I think it built a really good groundwork about what we need to understand is happening in 95 in ECW.
Hell yeah, 100%, man.
With that being said, it is time to get our fix. Hogan's going to look really out of place here.
Hogan fits in like a glove because he's doing coke with Tully Blanchard before his match. He looks just like him.
I love it. I love it. So for this Get Your Fix segment, I'm going to just give you guys the results of Hardcore TV quick. It's going to be scrolling on the bottom here. If you guys remember, Hardcore TV ran from 1993 to 2000. It was syndicated. It was also broadcast on the MSG network. So the first one we're going to be viewing, and I'm just going to read you the results and some of the other memorable segments. On the 3rd of January, 95, of the year, Mikey Whipwreck defeated Donnie Allen. The ECW World Tag Team Champions Public Enemy defeated Tasmaniac and Sabu to retain their titles. This was a taping from Holiday Hell 94. And then the third match was ECW World Champion Shane Douglas defeating Ron Simmons to retain the title. We also had the Hardcore TV on the 10th. This was kicked off in the show saying that the ECW arena has been expanded to allow more people in the arena. Styles introduced Stevie Richards, who was dressed up like Scotty Flamingo from WCW. Styles continues to tell Richards that Johnny Polo isn't here tonight, and we get the debut of Raven. So obviously this wasn't on Double Tables, but I thought I had to mention this. The influence that Raven eventually has, and we're going to be talking about him in 95, about everything he's doing with Tommy Dreamer and all the feuding he does and groundbreaking stuff. Raven really comes into his own here. And who would have thought the announcer from WWF, when WWF let him go, they didn't know what they were missing.
Absolutely. And I mean, he went on to have a hell of a career, both outside of ECW. He went back to WWF eventually. He ran his gauntlet in WCW. Some of my favorite shit in the world. I love Scotty Flamingo, man.
So on that card, Stevie Richards defeated Hack Myers and Too Cold Scorpio defeated the Sandman. On the 17th of 95, Paul Laurie defeated Mikey Whipwreck. And the storyline between this is Laurie is just jealous of what Whipwreck has accomplished in wrestling as they once were tag partners. Al Snow defeated Oshimo Nishimura, who is coming from WING as well. And the Pitbulls defeated the Bad Breed in a losing team breaks up match. So that's the reason why they did turn on each other. Sense. So on the 24th of 95, from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, we had two matches. Chris Benoit defeated Too Cold Scorpio, and ECW World Champion defended his title. Shane Douglas defeated Ron Simmons to retain. And of course, on the 31st of 95 from Orlando, Florida, we had two matches. The Tag Team Championship on the line. Public Enemy defeated Taz and Sabu to retain the titles. And the main event, Cactus Jack defeated the Sandman in a Falls Count Anywhere match. And that sets the table for why we're here. It sets two tables, actually. Double tables.
Hell yeah.
We're here to talk about double tables.
Yeah, just a quick side note. How crazy is it? Out of all these people that we're talking about, the only one that's still active in the ring is Too Cold Scorpio.
That's true.
That's fucking mind blowing. And he's still
Douglas
doing
wrestle at the FWF show or something, or was he just
it doesn't count. FWF's not real. What are you talking about?
I agree with you.
Those guys play with dolls. What? No. But listen, Shane Douglas. If he was still able to be active, I would absolutely go see Shane Douglas wrestle.
All right, so that brings us to Extreme Championship Wrestling Double Tables from February 4th, 1995, from the ECW Arena, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the home of ECW, and our current champions are the ECW World Champion Shane Douglas. He won it back on March 26, 1994. He won it in an Ultimate Jeopardy match. Listen to the names in this match of who he won the title from. Curtis Hughes, Rocco Rock, Johnny Grunge, Road Warrior Hawk, Kevin Sullivan, and Taz were in a Ultimate Jeopardy match. The title change aired on the 29th of 94 on Hardcore TV via tape delay, but they waited all the way until August 27, 94, where it was renamed the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. When he relinquished the NWA, split the titles, ECW left the NWA and was renamed Extreme Championship Wrestling. And on the WWE list, they recognize August 27, 1994 as the starting point of him winning the title, but he won it March 26th live in the Ultimate Jeopardy match.
That's wild. I mean, imagine people doing that today. It would be spoiled. You'd probably forget about it by the time they aired.
Yep.
It's awesome.
And our
Very
TV
awesome.
champion, Dean Malenko, won it back on November 4th, 1994. And our tag team champions, our Public Enemy, they won it back on November 5th, 94. And they took the titles off of Cactus Jack and our beloved Mikey Whipwreck. I have a feeling Mikey Whipwreck's going to be our fan favorite here in ECW.
Oh, big hearts, big hearts. He's already a fan favorite over here, but I'm looking forward to it.
So we open the show here. Joey Styles standing at ringside. He welcomes the fans to the arena, and we immediately get the sexiest man on earth. Jason Knight is introduced. Jason puts over the atmosphere in the building. He quickly insults Joey Styles, and he introduces his new tag team who will be ECW World Tag Team Champions. And we get the first emergence of the Pitbulls, dude. Like when they came out, I couldn't believe it was them. And like, I don't know, it just didn't fit the aesthetic. I didn't expect them to be coming out.
Yeah, no, it was cool though, because it was like I popped instantly. I was like, "Oh hell yeah!" Because I went into this blindly. I haven't watched any of these shows in at least 15 years, so this was a sweet breath of fresh air. The Pitbulls look great. I love the intensity they bring when they're coming out of the curtain. They got the chains wrapped around them. They're wearing that latexy ones, singlets. They're killing it, man.
So Jason Knight introduces another talent from Japan. He's just a guy wearing a hockey mask. He's at least 6'6". He's a big dude. He calls him Jason the Terrible. So this is some not good. This is like kind of the bad stuff. And it's weird because the screen cap on Peacock is this picture of Jason the Terrible with the hockey mask. It's like, how are you going to get people to watch this with that? You have all these guys on the show. You got Taz, and you got the Public Enemy, and you got the Pitbulls, and you show Jason the Terrible. Really?
It's wild, man. I was taken back because I do remember some fuckery, but this literally lands with the ECW WWE zombie gimmick. You know, it's just random. That's probably why they made the zombie gimmick. Like it just comes full circle. It's like Vince is probably like, you remember that Jason kid? Let's make a zombie. Like it just doesn't make any sense, but go for it, man.
All right, so before I let you take the lead here with the first opening match, we get footage of Bad Breed and the Pitbulls feud where the Pitbulls defeated Bad Breed, and Bad Breed had to break up, as we mentioned in the newsletter. They're no longer a tag team. They're going to be facing each other on this show as well. Take the lead here. We get the Young Dragons and Hack Myers taking on the aforementioned Jason the Terrible and the Pitbulls, number 1 and number 2.
Yeah, very interesting, very wild, but it was good. Like, it's cool to see the Pitbulls. I was a little confused with the Jason gimmick. Didn't see too much, but I mean, does not take away from the in-ring action and the intensity that's going on. Again, not as high quality camera work going on here, so it is a little hard to follow these tag team matches because I mean, lack of better, they don't have enough cameras on the fucking floor to show you everything. But very, very fun. It was a hot start, not like your WCW, Dean Malenko, Ultimo Dragon fucking opens up the show start, but it was very entertaining to say the least, and I had a good time with it, man.
Yeah, we see the Pitbulls lifting Jason into the air and then connecting with a big splash for a win. That's the end here. Young Dragons and Hack Myers are brought in to do one thing and one thing only. That's to put over the Pitbulls here, and the new emergence of Jason the Terrible, who they're trying to get over. He's a big dude, though, 6'6". He looked menacing. I guess I'll give him that.
He looked like Jason, so yeah. I mean,
all right. So we go back to Jason cutting a promo. Jason says they will no longer see Jason the Terrible in ECW. Inside the ring, thankfully, Myers is attacking the Young Dragons, and Pitbull say they will win the tag titles. And we get a whole segment. Jason's back to the ring, gets a punch in. Myers goes to work on Jason. Then we get Angel coming down in a wedding dress. She slaps Myers, then proceeds to spank her. And then she kisses Myers. This was a weird post-match segment. Your thoughts on this?
It's not as bad as Sherry and the Colonel from WCW.
Fair.
So it was interesting, out of context as fuck. So like it really was hard to follow. It was like, what's this chick doing with that, in the wedding? Like, it was a clusterfuck. But again, it wasn't bad. It was entertaining.
Which leads us into our next match here. And these are some name brands in ECW. We got Tommy Dreamer taking on Stevie Richards, and he has Raven in his corner. So have to remember this. Tommy Dreamer, who was introduced to the ECW audience as a jobber, a guy who wasn't hardcore. He was booed mercilessly throughout 1994. He's now getting a good smattering of cheers. And early on, this match goes to the beginning. I mean, we got Dreamer taking Richards to the floor, and we get into the fans. It's chaos from the beginning. This was a really good match, and I was happy to see this. Although I was happy to see the Pitbulls, that first match kind of, like you mentioned, it dragged a little bit, but I thought this was more what I was expecting from 1995 WCW and the personalities in the ring. We got Raven popping up on the apron to distract Dreamer, and then moments later, Raven enters the ring, holds Dreamer, allowing Richards to deliver the super kick, and Dreamer ducks a second super kick and delivers a low blow to roll Richards up for the win. So match was okay. I mean, not the best match, but again, it was still very cool to see a young Tommy Dreamer young Stevie Richards. And Raven's really his first emergence in the ring here. He's doing some stuff. Awesome to see.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's cool. I mean, a lot of storytelling going in. Raven and Dreamer probably have one of the best rivalries in all of pro wrestling history. Like, we've seen Raven just get inducted in the Impact Hall of Fame, and he still DDT'd Tommy Dreamer after his speech and did his, quote the Raven, nevermore. You're building that kind of, and this, I mean, we're getting the birth of it kind of here, but it's so awesome to kind of see that feud beginning. I mean, I've got to sit and ring announce for Perry Saturn and Raven against Tommy Dreamer. Like, shit's crazy that they were still going after all these years. But I mean, awesome stuff. Very happy to watch this kind of stuff, because this is like the nostalgia fact for me. So I'm loving it.
So following the match, Raven got into the ring and he's held back by Stevie Richards and the referee. Dreamer then grabs the microphone and he starts ripping on WWF. This is an interesting promo. He's telling everybody to kiss his ass, and Dreamer then starts an ECW chant. The fans are happily obliging him, and they're going off. And this was a good understanding about how far Dreamer came.
Yeah.
Because if you watch any of the ECW product before this, Tommy Dreamer was really like, he had to become hardcore. He had to earn his stripes. It was like the young boys in Japan that need to just earn their keep in the ring. And Tommy Dreamer finally was christened by the hardcore audience. And this was obvious here. And as you mentioned, Raven and Tommy Dreamer are going to be having a feud for an extended period of time, years and years
forever.
And years, forever.
They're still hating each other.
They're on loop like Back to the Future. It's Biff and Marty McFly nonstop. So Tommy Dreamer and Stevie Richards and Raven, this was a fun match, although not the best in-ring action. It was really awesome to see these guys at the beginning of their stages in ECW.
Yeah, and Tommy Dreamer is a t-shirt wrestler at heart. Even in his beautiful physique here in 1995, he's still throwing t-shirts out. Like, it was off halfway during the match, and then he put it back on.
So in the next match here, we get Paul Loria. He has Jason in his corner taking on Mikey Whipwreck. Why don't you lead us through this?
Oh my goodness! I hear "Loser" start playing by Beck, and I'm like, all right, the feels start coming back. The hair sitting up on the arms, the goosebumps are taking over the body. Man, I love Mikey Whipwreck, and this was a really entertaining match. Good back and forth. I'm not familiar with Paul Loria that much, and it was good to kind of watch this, enjoy it. It was fun, but obviously Mikey Whipwreck just doing his Mikey Whipwreck shit. This was probably one of the better Mikey Whipwreck matches, because he actually won, and as we know, Mikey never wins. Mikey only wins by accidents, and like, that was a really good storytelling. So to see him kind of taking that upper hand here, doing his thing, picks up the win against his buddy, I fucking love it.
Yeah, I agree with that. This was interesting for me because I always think about Mikey Whipwreck having accidental offense, and he's always selling, and that's really his selling point of getting the crowd behind him. He gets beat up. When I started seeing him hitting offense from the beginning, he was sending Loria into the front row twice. The fans were literally throwing Loria back onto the guard railing, and seeing him get offense in was interesting to me. And I know it's probably commonplace in 95 for everybody to see it, but they always upsell this Mikey Whipwreck, who is just, I guess, not getting any offense. If he looks into it, when that Cactus Jack run where he's tag team champions with him, that's what I think of when I think Mikey Whipwreck. And to me, like, watching this is going to be fun because we're going to get to see a different side of Mikey Whipwreck where he's showcased, and that's awesome.
100%. We're literally right out of the "it's Mikey, he likes it, he really likes it" promo. Like, we're past that. We're seeing Mikey Whipwreck as a star now. He's not just the ring crew guy that they hired. He is really shaping to be, I mean, the Mikey Whipwreck that he grows up to be and becomes this massive star in ECW, man. And I'm so happy that we're right in time for the journey with it.
So our next match here, Ian Rotten takes on Axelrod, and this is a result of them breaking up after having to break up from the tag team match. So not a great match. We see Ian Rotten getting the win here. Ian trips up Axel using the ropes for leverage and picks up the win. Meltzer gave this a 1.5 stars. That's probably being generous here. We see a timekeeper hammer get involved and gouging the arm of Ian. This was a little bit more hardcore than we've seen in the rest of the matches, but not the best work. But again, still telling the story, and I don't understand why you'd break them up as a team, because it seems like they're going nowhere as far as being apart. They should just might as well just be a tag team. I don't know.
Well, this feud goes on, I think, for a good portion of this year. So we're going to see a lot of Ian, a lot of Axel going at each other. I mean, eventually we will be watching the Taipei death match where they put the glue on their hands and they dip it in buckets of glass and they just beat the piss out of each other with glass loaded fists. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm here for that. That will
be I listen, I'm here for that too, because I don't mind seeing Ian or Axel Rotten get fucking beat up with but I mean, this is a very big blood feud for ECW at the time, and like you said, it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was I think this is just a story step match, and it really didn't really mean too much, but you're starting to see, these two brothers could beat the piss out of each other. They hate each other now. So I think it's more of a story-esque thing. And maybe Meltzer kind of missed the mark on that because he wasn't fouling as much as, most of the hardcore fan bases.
Agreed. So moving on to Chris Benoit taking on Al Snow in the next match. I'll let you take the lead here. This was probably on paper, you would go in thinking it's one of the best matches of the night. And I think it delivered in that way. So tell us about it.
Yeah. Well, first off, Benoit, they start with both men in the ring. Benoit is rocking his Pegasus trunk still, looking fresh and fabulous, jacked. Really cool to see him so young still. I mean, pre our 96, WCW talking, this is Benoit in his prime. I think this is what really gets him hired. And you see a lot of potential in him. What stole the whole moment was seeing a beardless, short-haired Al Snow wrestling very, very well. And I know Al Snow got the grunt of the shit with the gimmicks later on, but I mean, this is pre-head. This is what does everybody want? He's not, it's crazy. So very awesome to see these two lock up together and see the back and forth. I was not expecting so much from Al Snow, the Snowman Al Snow, as they were calling him. I mean, it lived up to a good Dean Malenko match. It was really good back and forth. Obviously, Benoit beats Al Snow because it's Al Snow, but it was very entertaining, man, and fucking a lot of good back and forth between the two. I was surprised.
The crowd was really behind Benoit from the beginning, and they're really selling up the Benoit crippling Sabu thing. Like, it's clear that that's what they're really trying to get over. And it's funny because now they would shy away. Most companies would shy away from an accident, and rightfully so. They probably shouldn't. But this would be like, I don't know, Jungle Boy taking on a whole gimmick for snapping Ray Phoenix's arm. And Chris Benoit, I mean, obviously Sabu had to be okay with it. It's different culture, and it was probably good for Sabu's career that happened because it made him even more badass as far as perception goes. But this was interesting because every time he lifted him up, it seemed like the crowd wanted Benoit to drop him on his neck. And it just was fascinating to me that they would lean into it. I mean, even calling him the Crippler, that's where it came from.
Yeah, no, and it's crazy to think like that. I mean, the Crippler persona lasted his entire career too. Just think of it all stems back to him dropping Sabu on his neck, and like you said, the crowd really does, like, you see those pauses from them. We're like, oh, it's like the DVD menu thing that's bouncing off the, almost hitting the corners but never does. Like, they're just waiting for it, and it's just that, like, it never happened.
So watching this match too, you mentioned Al Snow, young, beard, the whole thing. What's your initial thoughts on Al Snow and like his legacy in wrestling through WWF, ECW, all of that?
I've heard great stories about him. I know he's an excellent trainer. I was very entertained with him in WWF. I mean, the whole him and Big Boss Man feud was great. There was a lot of good stuff out of Al Snow, and he did fantastic. But like, this is a whole different ballgame. I was not expecting to see this Al Snow whatsoever. I have no recollection of this Al Snow. This was a brand new person. So to see that he could actually go toe to toe with, someone as the likes of Chris Benoit, it's very impressive, man, and kind of makes me think like one of those what if situations. What if Al Snow became like a completely different persona and character? Like, he wouldn't have been part of the goofy shit. We would have seen more action out of him. He wouldn't be in the Job Squad. It would get better and better. And for what he did do out throughout his career, I think it was amazing. But I wish we got more of this. I really do. I wish we would have seen an Al Snow this caliber fight like Kurt Angle or something. Like there would probably be some really good fucking wrestling going on.
Yeah, and with Al Snow, I think about 2000 with that short period of time where he had that heel run during the McMahon-Helmsley era, and when Triple H is champion, he's asking for people to step up, and he's sort of like the lackey as far as heels go, and he's feuding with Mick Foley, so he's sort of in that blend there. I like that edge of that he had, and they were trying to shift away from the Attitude Era, the head gimmick, and the job squad. Al Snow, he has the ability to be a good worker. And I think, like you mentioned, he's a good trainer. I just think he was sort of hamstrung by that gimmick that WWF kind of put him in a box and said, this is who you are. And it worked for him. I mean, it made him a lot of money and it got him longevity in his career. But as you mentioned, if he would have been presented in a different way as a technician, he was able to be presented as a guy that can work circles around you, not so much the comedy guy. Because I think WWF brought him in as the comedy guy after the New Rockers thing sort of failed with Marty Jannetty. He became the guy with, head and the job squad and it worked for him. But I agree. He had the ability to work. Maybe it was a charisma thing, but who's to say a lot of technicians didn't have the most charisma? I think he kind of got put in a box like a lot of guys do. And he became a certain character and had a ceiling, a glass ceiling.
Yeah. He just kind of stuck with it too. But I've heard like a lot of people I know that work in the industry, they were trained by him. Now I get it. Like it all clicked watching this match. I was like, fuck, he does know how to wrestle. It's not a shitty gimmick. Like, dude is really talented, and like I take back every bad word I might have ever muttered about Al Snow my entire life after this. Like this was really fucking entertaining and just impressive, man.
So we move on to the next match here. It's not the main event, but it is for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. Tully Blanchard, Shane Douglas, they get another stab at this. They're trying to right the wrong of that 60-minute, aka 43-minute draw. Tully opens the match trying to shake hands. He tricks Douglas, and they go to work, and the crowd's not really reacting the way you probably want them to. The finish sees Tully continue his attack on the floor with a backbreaker. Douglas eventually reverses a vertical suplex back into the ring and picks up the win. Not that much of a reaction from the crowd. Wonder if they're going to be moving away from this because it seems like it fell flat. Didn't get the reaction as far as Tully getting heat from the ECW crowd. I don't know. It just didn't resonate the same way I would have expected it to.
Yeah, it was weird. The whole thing was weird. Before I watched the show like in full, I was like kind of doing the scrolling through it and checking out like what I was going to be watching. And I was like, is that fucking Tully Blanchard? Shane Douglas? Like, it was just, it took me back a little bit. But this had no legs underneath it, and I hope they don't continue with it because that would be a weird thing for ECW to do. Like, you have a shit program, don't follow suit with it, figure it out, make it better, make it different, something. But yeah, Tully doesn't look great here, not that fun. There's a lot of brawling on the outside, not what you would expect from a Tully Blanchard match. But I mean, even a Shane Douglas match, granted we are in ECW and shit gets crazy, but not a lot going on. It was okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's some botches too. There was a couple spots in the match that were botched. It didn't feel like an ECW World Heavyweight Championship match, and that might be a theme going forward, where the World Championship is overshadowed by a lot of the different titles. At one time, the FTW Championship felt more important than the ECW title. The TV Championship felt like the main title actually main evented a couple shows. So I don't know. Like, when you look at the ECW World Heavyweight Championship, it probably should be on the match we're going to be talking about next. If you think about it, Cactus Jack and Sandman represent what ECW was heart and soul wise more than, I mean, Douglas does, don't get me wrong. He is the guy who kind of started this revolution character wise, but Tully Blanchard, not so much.
Yeah, no, it's wild. It wasn't expected and didn't need to be there. They could have done anything else with it and made it work. I'd be more happy with it.
All right. So the next match here is our main event. Well, it's our co-main event. Let's be honest here. Cactus Jack taking on Sandman in a Texas death match. Please lead the way, my friend.
Well, man, I'll tell you, the smile that was put upon my face as I got to this match, because I'm very, very well studied in the Sandman and Cactus Jack feud. It is one of my favorite feuds in all of pro wrestling. The seriousness, the craziness that comes out of Mick Foley during these years, the promos. You get so much beautiful, beautiful stuff from both men, man. And it's great. The Texas Deathmatch thing, little fucking weird on the rules. We've seen our fair share of Texas death matches. This is the first time I've ever seen somebody have to get pinned and then counted out for the count of 10. Made for a lot of weird false finishes, a lot of quick getting up on Sandman's behalf. I think Foley too. Like there was just like it would get pinned, it would be like 2 count. Sandman's back up after he just completely, took a really terrible bump on the outside. But awesome shit. Love Sandman, love Cactus Jack. Again, very, very fun, entertaining match. I'm surprised that Foley picked up the win here, but I mean, there was some great chair shots going on. This is the meat and potatoes of ECW here. Like Sandman throwing the chair backwards and hitting Cactus Jack in the head, like in the middle of the match, while they're on the floor. I pop for that shit, and I love it. And like Sandman looks exhausted. You believe in it because you're like, man, these guys are just beating the piss out of each other, and it works, and it was great. I absolutely loved it. I thought it wasn't the best workout match. Like it wasn't a work rate match. There was not, but it was storytelling. Mick Foley's fucking crazy. I love anytime I watch him, like jumping off the apron with the chair, doing his. It's just fucking. It drives me nuts. A light to fly here. Like this is my fucking ECW.
Yeah, and the other thing I pulled away from this match was how impressive Sandman was in his heyday. We always think about Sandman botching things and hacking WCW, and he was pretty impressive here. I mean, he again, not Chris Benoit, he's not Al Snow, he's not Dean Malenko, but he knows his role here about what he's good at and what gets the fans excited. And him and Cactus Jack really worked a solid match as far as what it was going to be expected. And I agree, the Texas Deathmatch rules were strange. There always are strange. I'm not a fan of the match. But yeah, I mean, I thought this match was really, really good so far. I mean, to me, aside from the Benoit and Al Snow match, this match had me very excited to watch, and it definitely didn't disappoint. Probably better without the gimmick, but it was a really good match.
I know, absolutely. And just really thoroughly just enjoyed going back and watching some Cactus Jack and Sandman. Like, it gives you those, like, this is why I fell in love with wrestling, or mainly because of these two guys, like, and seeing that, getting involved and, like, just sitting down and enjoying it again. It lights me up like it's Christmas, man. I absolutely love it.
I love the ending, too. You mentioned the chair, throwing the chair at Sandman, then he connects with an elbow drop, gets the 3, Sandman gets up, Cactus Jack hit a DDT on the concrete floor, he gets a 3 count, Sandman gets up again, another DDT by Cactus Jack, Sandman continues to get up, and then finally that third DDT, you can hear his head smack the concrete through the pixelated videotape. Sandman can't get up. Again, Meltzer wasn't really kind to his match work rate wise, but again, this isn't the Tokyo Dome. This isn't good. What did you expect?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
What did you expect? This was great for what it was, and to me, this was ECW in '95. This is what I wanted to see. This is what I signed up for. I was very excited.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better myself, man. Absolutely.
So we do have our main event, and it's Sabu and the Tasmaniac taking on Public Enemy for the Tag Team Championship. This is another opportunity for Public Enemy to put another tally in the positive little section for us. This is a double tables match. This is what the event's named after. It's for the Tag Team Championship. Going into this match, expectations, what did you have for this? And I guess did it deliver on your end?
Well, obviously, I mean, after watching a year's worth of really bad Public Enemy matches on the WCW side of things, I wasn't expecting anything. I know how good Sabu is. I know how good Taz is. I mean, this is beat me if you can, survive if I let you, Taz. Like, he's still got hair. He's wearing the Fred Flintstone weird gimmick going on. Like the tassels. I mean, but I knew what I was going into. Like, I knew what I was going to get out of it. It exceeded my expectations. I fell in love with it all over again. This was so good. Sabu is a spectacle. He really is. He is somebody that when I see get in the ring, I'm instantly up, ready. Like, let's go. Let's see how crazy this motherfucker is going to get, because he does get crazy in the ring. We seen it when he did the plancha to the outside, and I think it was Rocco Rock was sitting in the chair, completely smashes the chair. It was beautiful. You're like, yes, man. Like, this is what I love about it. And Public Enemy was fucking entertaining in this match.
They were.
Again, it is hard to pay attention to all of it because the camera's quality, all that shit. But what you see, you enjoy. And yeah, man, Public Enemy was so miles above and beyond where they are at 96 here. And you feel it. The crowd loves them. Like, once the music hits, man, it's just you're part of it again. You're like, oh, okay, this is why I like them so much. Yeah, all right. Like, we needed the reminder, and yeah, I mean, we got Sabu hitting the leg drop to the table at the end to get the win. Fucking awesome. Pandemonium again in the ring. 911's out there. He's fucking throwing people around. And like, they're about to do that spot where they put Public Enemy #1 through the table, because that's what they are. It's thing 1 and thing 2, you know. But Sabu sets the table up on the top rope. He's got a chair. Like, you're like, what the fuck is this guy thinking? Like, what chaos could come out of this? And then Benoit comes out of nowhere and attacks Sabu, and fucking almost, this is where the crippler lives on, man. He powerbombs him through Rocco Rock. Sabu almost completely misses the table. It looked like he landed on his neck. It was insane. It was beautiful, chaotic madness. We love beauty and chaos. It's the best way to end a wrestling show, right?
Yeah, so we ended with Sabu and Tasmaniac, our new ECW tag team champions, and it was every bit as chaotic as you mentioned. We got a frying pan shot. We got the Arabian face buster. We got outside tables, somersault splashes, stuff off the turnbuckles. And I agree, Public Enemy looked strong here, and I was kind of shocked, and they have a lot to prove here in ECW on our end. Obviously, they earned their money, and they did it because of things like 1995. But even the Benoit stuff, that Benoit promo that ended the show, cutting the promo on Sabu, I mean, you felt it. He said he let Sabu back in ECW because he wants him back in ECW, and he says, I know I can beat you whenever I want to, and Benoit says that he and Dean Malenko will be crowned the new ECW World Tag Team Champions. I'm so looking forward to it. I mean, Sabu and the Tasmaniac versus Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit, the next event. This is the classic indie strategy of hyping it up. You set the stage for that next event. And I'm not sure if it's main eventing the next event, but I'm certainly thinking it's going to be here, maybe at a house show in Florida somewhere. But goddamn, they had me hyped up following this match. This was awesome.
Yeah, I love that promo too. Like, again, production wise, it's never going to be, WWF in 95. It's not going to be WCW in 95. But that promo package, different camera angles, hitting Benoit's face, like the intensity, the blacked out background, him just talking, like you're sucked into it. You feel it. And like you said, Dean Malenko and Benoit versus Sabu and Taz, hell yeah, sign me the fuck up, man. I might watch it twice.
God damn, pal. It's the indie mindset of like, you got to hook them on that night, tell them what the main event is, and get them to buy tickets on their way out. And that's how ECW is doing their business here. You got to make people excited for the next time and get them while they're already excited about the product. And what better way than announcing that match? God damn, dude.
Yeah. And like that, the fan base, we see the same guys in the front row for like almost the entirety of ECW, and it's almost like they punch the ticket out as like the wrestlers do. They're like, all right, sign me up for next week, same time, same spot, like, let's do it. And I love it, man. Like, you could see just the love from the fan base. Like, when Public Enemy comes out, and the whole crowd, love them or hate them, they're doing this, they're having a great time. It's a fucking party. That's what it should be. That's how I feel when I go to AEW shows, dancing the FTR's theme song in the third row and just enjoying it. It just makes it such a better experience, man. And it's not like you're not watered down, fabricated bullshit. You are living the hardcore style with these guys, and man, do I love it. It's just so many floodgates of good wrestling memories were washed upon me from just this very first show we did. I'm so goddamn excited.
Yeah, and I think what really takes you back is the fan interaction. It makes it feel like there's I don't know if the word is jealousy, but like, I wish that this still existed in the same way it did. And GCW has that same appeal, but not to the same level, not to the same effect. I don't think there's not enough mainstays in GCW. Everybody sort of they're transitioning to other companies, and it feels like people are just kind of satellites there. But ECW, this felt like a home. This felt like a home base for all of these guys, that they're all working for the same cause. Like, this is a revolution that every single one of these guys saw the vision, and they were drinking that Paul Heyman Kool-Aid. And even the fans were, they were just excited to be a part of this. And you feel something special when you watch these shows.
Yeah, 100%. And another cool thing is, like, you know, Taz gets called up to WWF. The heat he gets on his way out travels with him to the new company. And that's like unheard of in pro wrestling. Like, you know, Cardona could be signed to WWE next week, and he's not going to come out as like, he might be Matt Cardona. He might be the deathmatch king, but the fans are going to eat him up. They're going to love it. Here, like, when somebody would debut somewhere else, like, you would get hit with boos. You know, people pissed off. Like, they still were so mad that you left ECW, because that's how hardcore the fan base was. It was the best, man. And you didn't see that with anything. It's magical.
I still remember watching that event live where Taz loses his championship for the first time. It was the triple threat, Mike Awesome and Tanaka, and he gets eliminated so quickly, and everybody knew he was leaving, so they just sort of made the decision to make it from the jump and decide Awesome and Tanaka are going to decide the new champion. And just the heat he got and how emotional he was. He's trying to be angry and flipping people off, but he knew it was coming. He knew the heat was coming when he was leaving, and you can't blame him. He had to go get paid. He had to do his thing.
Yeah.
That's where the money was. But there was a piece of him that felt like he was leaving a family member, that ECW, he was leaving behind. And I don't want to speak for him, but the emotions are written on his face. He is distraught as he gets eliminated and walks out, even though he's flipping people off and trying to stay in character. Saying goodbye to ECW had to be really, really hard for him.
Yeah, and like, we've seen it happen several times. A lot of talent going in and out. Like, when the Dudleys wrestled their last match there, like, it was like, literally, like you said, it's losing the family member. Like, you are losing that person. We're never going to see that Bubba Ray Dudley ever again. And I mean ever again, because he was getting away with some shit down there that nobody can get away with these days. And it's wild, man, but awesome to see. Like, I love the just the whole vibe of it, the whole magical presence that ECW has. It literally, like I said, I felt like it was Christmas morning watching the show, and I don't think that vibe's going to go away through the rest of the season. I think this is going to be really awesome and just fucking probably the funnest shit ever.
Yeah. Before we move into the chaser, just guys, when you're watching this, just take it in context. I know people want to do it on a star rating and compare it to Kenny Omega versus Okada at the Tokyo
It's
Dome.
not. Yeah.
You can't do that. It's about context and the importance of what they were doing as far as a movement. And we mentioned things like the music, the fan involvement, the whole energy of the crowd. That is more progressive than anything they're doing in the ring. And what they do in the ring becomes progressive. I mean, we're going to get hugely important 5-star integral matches like, you know, Dean Malenko is going to be wrestling Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, guys like those guys, Perry Saturn. They're going to be giving us that high quality in-ring action, but you also have to take some of the kind of shenanigans that are going, because you got to keep in mind, think about what's happening on the other channels at this point in WWF. Think about what, just in your mind, close your eyes for a second. Think about WWF 1995 and what's going on there. Aside from Shawn Michaels, it's a whole bunch of cartoons. It's a whole bunch of occupation gimmicks. Same thing with WCW. They're still trying to get their feet under them and figure out what the hell is going on. Hulk Hogan is still red and yellow, and it's very cartoony. Meanwhile, this is happening. That, to me, blows my mind more than anything, is you have this happening in parallel to that. And if you could put both of them, like put Raw in 95 next to this event from the same month, it would be, they're from two different parallel universes. There's no way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And couldn't have been put together anywhere better, man. What we were going through was, this is like puberty hitting pro wrestling, you know. you're done watching, you know, the fucking guys coming out with swords and Doink the Clown and shit like that. We are in the mood of rock and roll, drugs, sex, boobs. Everything's going great. Like you are just you are a teenager, little boy. This is gonna fucking suck you in. And I think it changed a lot of the landscape for pro wrestling. Still to this day. And it's insane how important ECW has been. And just this one episode, it floods all that back to you. And you're like, hell yeah, goddamn pal.
We give WCW a lot of credit for the reality-based programming, and WWF, what they do with Austin, and they get a lot of these soap opera-driven storylines in and out of the ring. But ECW takes it to the next level. We talk about fan involvement, but there's a lot of things that go on in 95 specifically. We're going to be seeing these soap opera, very akin to the Attitude Era type of storylines with, women involved and women getting attacked and things that WWF did at a larger scale because they have a larger audience and they have more production value. But ECW was setting the stage, and a lot of the storylines were stolen. I mean, straight up, like Paul Heyman's ideas were just straight stolen from him because, a lot of people didn't see that show in Orlando, Florida in 1995. But if someone else does it on a larger stage, it becomes their own. And that's what, you can't take anything away from them because good ideas are good ideas. But Paul Heyman definitely deserves a lot of credit. He gets a lot of credit. Let's not act like he doesn't. But
absolutely,
when you watch like this brainchild and it's coming, it's blossoming in front of us. It's going to be a really fun journey, and it's a short season, but 12 episodes will be a lot for us to really get the idea of where they're going and where they're going to wind up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be a very, very fun journey, man. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. That being said, let's go to the chaser and pick our favorite part of the Double Tables event. All right, Mike Belcaster, you tell me your favorite part of Double Tables and what'd you walk away really excited about?
Man, I don't know. This is a really hard one because there's so much going on all over the place. I mean, the nostalgia hit me. Seeing what was set up, like I know, like the Axel Rotten Ian Rotten match wasn't the best, but like I know that Taipei Death match is coming down the line. It's happening in '95. We're gonna talk about the Taipei Death match. Fucking pumped for it, man. But I'm giving the guy the win when he deserves it. Fucking Al Snow, like totally. You could throw this Al Snow on any TV this day and age. You'd be like, "Who's this guy? That's not Al Snow." Like it's just not the Al Snow that we've grown to know. He had probably one of the best matches on the card, and him and Benoit tore the fucking place down. It was really entertaining, very awesome. Again, I was not expecting to fall in love with Al Snow. My rekindling the fire with Public Enemy. It's shit's hitting the fan over there.
Yeah, there were a couple of good matches, and I'm gonna stick with one, but I'm really close, neck and neck with the Texas Death Match with Jack and Sandman is up there, but I have to go with Taz and Sabu taking on Public Enemy because it was the best kind of chaos in and out of the ring and the best spots. It was like a highlight reel of Sabu. Like if you want to get someone to understand who Sabu is a wrestler, you got to show him a match like this because he's all over the place. He's unpredictable, and I'm sure a lot of the stuff with Sabu. I loved his run, and like I think a lot of the exposure a lot of WWE fans have is that short run in 2005, I think it was, when he wrestled John Cena at SummerSlam, and the reemergence of ECW. He got a cup of coffee right before I think he got busted for smoking weed with RVD, right? That was right when he got fired. But Sabu in his prime, unheralded as one of those guys that changes the style. He's not the most smooth wrestler, but the risk this guy takes, the ability to give it all for the audience. Like that's what the thing you take away from Sabu. He is just every single night giving up his body for the live audience in the building, whether it's in front of 100 people, 300 people, or 3,000 people. Sabu's going to go out there and give you a show with chairs, with suicide dives, with flips, going into the crowd. He doesn't give a shit. He's homicidal. He's suicidal. He's genocidal. He's goddamn Sabu. Man, this match was awesome. And Public Enemy, they're impressing me. I'll be honest. This was the first week. Wasn't expected to be this impressed this soon. No,
me neither. And it was just it's night and day from what we were covering with WCW with them, and it's just awesome. I'm so happy. It's great.
Were you worn down from WCW? I thought we were having a good time there.
I wasn't worn down at all, but this kicked me. This turned me around like the sexiest man alive. He was checking out my suit. He looked at me. He's like, no. Like this was awesome, and like I'm telling you, a lot of my love of this business comes from, especially this time, but this company, and just kind of getting on that journey of seeing what we're up against, what we're seeing, the difference this is compared to an In Your House or a shock or a Saturday night WCW show. This is awesome. It still kicks that button of like, man, this is what I want to watch. I want to watch this. Like you love it. That's hard not to love it.
Yeah, and we still see the ripple effects of everything that ECW did, and whether people want to hate on it or call it garbage wrestling or whatever you want to say, our job here for ECW 1995 Shot of Nostalgia Season 2 is to correct some of those misconceptions that people have about Extreme Championship Wrestling and understand it's quality programming with really interesting characters and smart booking. Like, that's one thing away that you take away from this. There's a lot of good storytelling and character development that a lot of different promotions today, 2022, can learn a lot from. So if, Tony Khan wants to pick the brain of Eric Bischoff, maybe you should watch some of these tapes and figure out how to get people to get behind a character like a Tommy Dreamer. I mean, look at what they did in such a short period of time, months. They got Tommy Dreamer to become a cult hero, getting reactions in every building he goes to.
Yeah, 100%, man. He even from this show we just watched, I mean, he came a long way from his "thank you, sir, may I have another" when he's getting the canes to the back from the Sandman. Like, it's awesome to be on the journey with him, watch the journey, see how these talents become so damn lightning hot. Yeah, man, I'm here for it as always.
All right, the lights are coming on in the bar. We're about, believe it or not, an hour and 40 minutes, the quickest hour and 40 minutes of all time. We're going to be closing the tab, talk about what's next week, giving the final wrap up, and talking about what's going on in the tavern on the upcoming week. All right, Mike Belcaster, let's give our final wrap up of what's going on here. Next week's show is going to be episode 2 of season 2. We're going to be doing that on Friday, 11/25. It's going to be ECW Return of the Funker 1995 from February 25th, 1995, as you have the old school Terry Funk out there. That is a great figure.
He's rock and rolling, man.
We're going to be coming to you live on Black Friday. So you and I have to record. I'm just thinking about this now. Thursday's Thanksgiving. You and I have to record earlier in the week. We're going to be full on turkey on Thursday, and you guys are hanging out. Obviously, you're home Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Hopefully, you're not working. If you guys want to fill some void, talk about some ECW. Watch it on Thanksgiving. You know what? Put ECW Return of the Funker on Thanksgiving dinner. I'm sure Grandma will love it.
Yeah.
You enjoy it. The whole family's going to enjoy it. And then you guys can all get together, gather around your computer screen, your TVs, however you consume the tavern, and hear us talk about it. Pop in the comment section. And it sounds like a good Thanksgiving to me. But anyway, Mike Belcaster, what's going on your end? Turnbuckle Tavern, Fig Night, all the good stuff.
Yeah, we just had an awesome Fig Night. We had Steve Ozer from Mattel to talk about actually a Terry Funk figure and a Hulk Hogan figure. So it worked out beautifully that we are going right into Return of the Funker. I'm super pumped, man. It was a great episode. Make sure you go check it out. Obviously, you guys did wonders on the wrap-up this week. You guys go check out the flagship, all the good content that we got rolling, stone and going. I mean, even Long Balls had it was Hawk and Jordan holding down the fort. Great job, man. If football's your gimmick, which it ain't my gimmick, but if it is, I mean, go support them, man. Support the homies. Check out our shops. Check out our stuff. Go follow us, theturnbuckletavern.com. You know the drill. You like, subscribe, follow, share, buy a shirt, buy 2 shirts, buy 3 shirts. Get a Mike fucking Belcaster shirt. It's perfect time for your ECW show. It's good stuff. Yeah, you got your Tavern Daddies. We're rocking and rolling all over the place, man. So just hit that little bell, subscribe, and follow along with us. That's all I ask. It's a small ask.
The last showing I want to get in is tomorrow. Victory Pro Wrestling. I'll be live in Bayshore, New York. Turnbuckle Tavern table, giving out stickers, giving out pins and keychains, and just chilling the tavern. So if you're around Bayshore, New York, and you want to go see some good live wrestling, you don't want to travel out to Jersey, watch Full Gear on demand. Come out to Victory Pro Wrestling, get home, order Full Gear, and then you could watch MJF win the title, later on. But come support independent wrestling. And again, right following this, we're going to be watching a very pixelated Ace interviewing Joey Conway. The audio dropped on my channel, ACEFIELD Bell to Bell interview sessions. The audio will be dropping on Tuesday on the Tavern. This will also be dropping audio only on Saturday, so get used to that. If you're not really a video person, you could be listening to the audio of ECW 1995. So thank you to the Bit Too Bad Chads that are allowing us to have an audio platform for Shot of Nostalgia because of, honestly, popular demand. You guys have spoken, you like the product, and it's gotten a lot of good feedback, and I was blown away by season 1's finale feedback that we got from people, and all the love from people within the podcast community and outside. The pouring of love of the endeavor that you and I continue to find us in. And I'm just happy to be a part of it with you.
It's all that damn Paul Ellering's fault. We're spoiling him now. No, it's awesome, man. I can't be more thankful for the love towards the show. I'm having a blast doing this with you, and this is easily became my favorite day of the week for the tavern, man. I love going back and watching shit and then just talking about it because, I mean, it reminds you where you come from, and that's exactly what it's doing. And I feel like this is gonna just get better and better as it keeps going down the road. I'm loving it, man.
As I'm sitting here, an hour 40 in, I'm trying to think, because Eric Bischoff can't be in my ear. I don't know if Paul Heyman would yell at me.
Scumbag, Eric Bischoff, stealing another gimmick from Paul Heyman.
I don't even know how we should go about ending, but I just want to say I'm really looking forward to the remainder of this journey. And if you guys have ideas for season 3, I know there was some chattering in the wrap-up chat about what you guys want it to be. I know Tyson had asked for an Attitude Era. If there's enough groundswell for any sort of topic, whether it be WWE Ruthless Aggression, a later thing, maybe TNA, if you guys want to see something specific, if there's a majority of people saying something, we're going to dive into it. Because if there's interest, we definitely want you guys to be a part of the journey of making decisions. But we don't know yet, truly. We don't know what season 3 is. We're going to just enjoy season 2. We just started this, guys. So no decisions are made yet. Maybe mid-season. Well, that's kind of what we did for WCW. We kind of knew mid-season what would be our second season. So that's to come naturally to us. Yeah,
and maybe by the time we're halfway through this, Impact will finally email me back about my login for the goddamn app so we can watch some TNA, because they just not existed over there.
We may be having other guests on the show. I know for WCW, we had Matt from X Cooler. We had the Bad Chad. Nick Cambrier from Nick's Comic Nerds Nick the Comic Nerd, I should say, popped on here with us. Joey Conway has expressed interest to come on here with us, and he is a professional wrestler from NYWC who loves ECW. He has connections with Mikey Ripwreck, so who knows if we can somehow finesse that to get him here on the show. I don't know. Stay tuned for it. I'm really excited for what this holds. We know someone else has Raven's phone number, so we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, guys, I really appreciate you guys watching, because I got Paul Heyman in my ear. We gotta go. We're out of time.